Welcome to a special edition of On the Pen, where we're going to discuss a very interesting appointment to the FDA and what the potential implications may be for those using compounded versions of GLP-1 medications, specifically Tirzepatide and semaglutide. If you're new here, my name is Dave Knapp. I'm the man on the Mounjaro. That's why I'm here. You're on the pen. Wegovy, Saxenda, Victoza, Trulicity, Mounjaro, Zepbound, Compound. And that's what we talk about here at OnThePen. We bring you the latest news and information on GLP-1 medication so that you can have more competent and confident conversations with your doctor. And let's get into a very interesting appointment by President-elect Trump to the FDA Commissioner position. Now, this could be a pivotal moment for compounded GLP-1 medications. If you're not following along with the saga that's been going on, specifically as it relates to compound tirzepatide, you're going to want to go back and check out the videos or the blog articles at onthepen.com that we've covered that cover this topic extensively. But essentially, you have compounded medications, copies of medications that can be made of drugs that are in an FDA shortage. And tirzepatide has basically been in an FDA shortage since it came out in 2022, allowing compounded versions of it to be made. Now, a couple of months back, Eli Lilly, in the self-reporting mechanism that exists for manufacturers to report their shortages, said it's all commercially available. Now, we've covered all of the things around this, so we won't go into and opine on that decision. But basically, it put the hands in the FDA to validate that, which they did. And they're now being sued by a sort of a trade organization that represents 503B pharmacies that make these copies of these drugs when the medications are in shortage. So they're challenging it. We've already had the can kicked down the road a couple times with the FDA saying, you know what, we're going to halt enforcement on this, and we're going to come back to it here in a couple of weeks. So as a flyover, that's where things sit with the FDA and the determination of the tirzepatide shortage. Now, looming in the background is semaglutide as well, which has been reported by Novo Nordisk as commercially available as well. We're waiting on a ruling from the FDA there as well, but I'd be surprised if we saw one before the latest date that they will update the court on tirzepatide, which is December 19th, unless they rule on something prior to that date. Of course, if they do, we'll have it covered end-to-end, wall-to-wall here at OnThePen, so you got to make sure that you hit that like button and the notification button, the bell, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel as well. You might even want to sign up for email alerts at onthepen.com/email so you don't miss any of this news. But in this news today, and why this is important, is the head of the FDA may determine the route that this goes, especially if the can continues to be kicked down the road, to put the decision ultimately in the hands of a potential new administration. So this nominee to FDA commissioner, his name is Dr. Martin Makary, and he currently serves as an executive at Sesame. Sesame is a telehealth company that connects patients with prescribers of, you guessed it, compounded GLP-1s. So he brings a unique perspective to the FDA on this topic specifically. Now, we try to stay as out of the political realm as we possibly can here at OnThePen, but this could have major implications in something that we've been covering extremely close here. And what's at stake? Well, the future of compounded medications is at stake, which are a lifeline to millions of patients who are navigating the shortages and the unattainable cost for many of these branded medications. Of course, that's one of the byproducts of the shortage and the availability of the compounded versions, that there's actually an affordable option out there for people who don't have insurance coverage. Now, why is this important, right? So we kind of laid it out at the beginning about how the FDA removing tirzepatide from the shortage list has set off this chain of events that ultimately puts compounded versions of these medications in peril. So this connection to Sesame, which is a platform that provides compound prescriptions, might signal that he could be uniquely understanding of the essential role that compounding plays for accessibility to GLP-1s, especially in the critical fight against obesity in the United States, where there are estimated to be over 100 million people living with the disease of obesity, which is just a staggering number, with a whole host of implications on what that means for our healthcare system at large. So this is a very interesting appointment Now, the tension between compound pharmacies and the pharmaceutical giants like Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk has been heating up now for the last year or so. And the removal of tirzepatide from the shortage list really took this thing to a new level. So with the can being kicked down the road, it could end up putting this in the hands of Dr. Makary, and his background may indicate that he could be pro-compound, that he could be for the accessibility of these medications, and maybe rule in the patient's favor rather than just sort of going along with whatever the drug manufacturers are reporting. So I think there's a few potential outcomes here. This might not be all of them, but a couple things that maybe we could expect if this nominee is eventually appointed to commissioner of the FDA. Now, he could look at reinstating the shortage listings of both tirzepatide and semaglutide, which would open the door for compound pharmacies to continue production. I think the end result there is that patients relying on that option would breathe a massive sigh of relief and hopefully get out of this rut of being just ever consumed with the stress and anxiety about losing access to their medications. We could see a more patient-centric focus on regulations. So we've talked about how the FDA really needs clearer and more transparent guidelines when it comes to this whole process of FDA shortages. We don't get to see any of the numbers. We don't see any of the information that we look at. All we do is go to the pharmacy and can't get our medicine. And when we can't do that, we should demand that alternatives are provided by the framework that was set up by our own government to make sure that we had access to our medications. No patient should have to worry about missing access to their medication because there's not a commercially available dose that they need. There should be this fallback. That's why 503Bs were created. And so hopefully we see more patient-centric regulations and more transparency around this whole process of determining drug shortages and when 503B pharmacies can make and mass produce copies of the branded medications. Critics might take a little bit of a different angle on this. They might argue that Makary's ties to a company with connections to compounding create a conflict of interest, and it's likely that we see these allegations. It also highlights the pressing need for the FDA to put patients first, which hopefully, given his background, he would champion that. They could see continued corporate pressure, right? On the flip side, Big Pharma's influence over the FDA won't disappear overnight, regardless of who gets in there. And if Makary leans into that pressure, compounded GLPs could face, the tighter restrictions that we're seeing and maybe even further limitations. So there's a number of ways that this could go, but I am overall excited that the person stepping into that role has at least some understanding and familiarity about the importance of accessibility of compounded medications in the face of shortage. We set up at OnThePen a policy change request at policies4thepeople.com. I'll link it in the description of this video if you want to check it out. But basically just demanding that the incoming administration who did put this website up would take a look at offering more transparency in this whole process, because we're a champion of compounded GLP-1s in the copycat versions that 503Bs make as a critical backstop to drug shortages, right? And the challenge that we've seen here is that it essentially seems like, from the patient perspective, that once Big Pharma just says, we're good, there's plenty of medication there, that the FDA just rolls along with it. So we want transparency in this process. We want to see the numbers. We want to see that these pharmaceutical companies have an adequate supply of medication. I don't know if y'all saw this week, but Zepbound, MOUNJARO, they're being aggressively marketed on television again. Put it in the chat of this video if you have seen a recent commercial for Zepbound or MOUNJARO. MOUNJARO commercials existed before, but they're now also putting out their commercials for Zepbound. And it's unbelievable. People can't find their medicine right now. And we could go into the missed earnings last quarter and all that, but we've already hashed and rehashed that here as well at OnThePen.com. But what's that going to do for accessibility? It definitely feels, from the patient perspective, like we're being gaslit on these shortages. So I hope that Makary truly prioritizes patients, and I hope that his leadership restores that hope in people, or that people have in the FDA, by reevaluating their approach to these shortages and compounding in general. It has the potential to align the agency with the common folks that rely on these backstops for access to these medications. So I hope they do the right thing. We'll see, right? We'll see. I don't know much about this guy, but I'm excited personally that he has that background with Sesame Health, that he knows what's going on in the industry, and he knows how many people would be left out in the dark if all of a sudden overnight compounds just went away. Folks, I hope you found this update helpful. You can check out the blog article that covers this extensively at OnThePen.com. If you're not getting email alerts from OnThePen.com, you truly are missing out. OnThePen.com/email signs you up for that email list. We've got great information there. News articles drop right to your inbox. We give a weekly recap that's super helpful for people as well. Be on the lookout this week. We have a very interesting interview taking place this afternoon. I cannot wait to bring this to you. It is one of the largest interviews that we've ever done for On the Pen. Can't wait for that. And we've also got some giveaways. Can't Wait is a supplement that I've been taking that has really helped to move the needle in the weight loss department for me after being stalled out for a while. Again, this is not going to be for everybody. This is definitely something that you want to discuss with your doctor before you look into, but we've got bottles to give away, right, on the Pen Live. So we're going to be doing some giveaways on the channel coming up here, so I'm excited for that. There's just a lot to stay tuned for. Make sure you subscribe to On the Pen. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being the best part of what we do at On the Pen. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll check you